Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders both past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. Now informed that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair and disclosure of political donations. I've not received any. Ms Squire.
None received, Mr Mayor.
And the disclosure of political donations, thanks.
The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 147, requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and/or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. The forms are also available at the back of the Council chamber during meetings. Excuse me. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 79C(1) of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the Council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 2A of Part 6 of that Act.
Thank you, Ms Squire. CM4, apologies, there are none, we're all accounted for. CM5, Merrill Minute, there isn't one. And CM6, action plans, happy to accept that in block. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted as a block. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
I'm happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, did you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There are no questions or debate. I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday the 13th of August. Thank you. Councillor Vandervan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 13 August 2018 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, did you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM8, there are no reports from community forums. CM9, there are no notices of motion or rescission. CM10, it brings me to the presentation and deputation. CM 10.1, the ARTC Inland Rail presentation. And with us tonight we have Sarah Joseph, who is the engagement leader at ARTC Inland Rail. Claire Arnold, the engagement advisor from ARTC Inland Rail. Linton Gloucester, the design manager from ARTC Inland Rail, and Dinesh Batra, the project manager from ARTC Inland Rail. And welcome to our humble council chamber, and if you could come forward and we'll listen to your presentation.
I just want to just test that it's working. Yeah. Yep. Sorry. Go back. Here we are. Thanks everybody basically for giving us this opportunity. So we are here to represent the project delivery team for Tottenham to Illabo section, basically, which is formed of two parts of it: Victorian section, which is Tottenham to Albury, and New South Wales section from Albury to Illabo. So we'll just basically brief about the broader aspects of the project, and in the context of Albury Council, what are the issues here, basically. So ARTC basically manages 8,500 kilometers of rail track, broader operator of the freight corridor on the basically. So again, what is Inland Rail Project? Inland Rail Project is about connectivity, providing the freight connectivity between Melbourne to Brisbane, basically, and it enables the double stack container trains to run on the corridor. It is about basically taking the future freight potential capacity to the required levels. So at the moment, the current freight connectivity goes through Sydney, a coastal route which is not reliable and efficient. But it provides a shorter and more efficient route in terms of less than 24 hours connectivity. So A2I, which is basically the New South Wales section we are talking about here, one of the 13 projects. So overall, Melbourne to Brisbane is broken down to 13 packages. A2I Albury to Illabo is one of those packages, basically utilizes the existing rail infrastructure networks, which is around 186 kilometers. So the works required here is achieving the clearances for double stack containers, which is vertical and horizontal clearances requirements. So vertical being 7.1 meter. So any structure which does not comply with those 7.1 meter needs to be upgraded. And their form of works which we can do to make it that clearance compliant. So again, how we can make it by either we can do a track lower, we can lower the track, we can replace the bridge, modify the bridge, or the signal structures modification. Again, the solution depends on each site, geometry of site, hydrology, and other flooding and environmental issues. So each site has, again, different solution. Where we are at the stage of the project, we are into feasibility design. At this stage, we are just going through the initial design, basically options, design, impact on and we are doing our early engagement. Basically, we are getting a feel what is our design solution is, what are the broader issues, and then we move forward, do our detailed design, we capture those issues. So feasibility design runs basically this year, end of this year, 2018. So we have our early, which we say as 30% of feasibility design, which is just first stage of the design. We are doing, as part of the early engagement, we are going to the councils, the stakeholders, RMS, basically CRN, whosoever the stakeholders are, and wider community as well. Getting the feel of the design, these are the design. If any broader issues, then we move forward, address them. So where we are. Intention is to lock the reference design solution by the end of this year, and take it for the next year, which will be about the detailed design, developing the design solution. The construction doesn't start until late 2020. And the construction period is between 2020 to 25. So there are basically they are discrete sections, structures along the corridor, which will have their own timelines, which will fit in anywhere between 2020 to 2025. Again, I spoke about that, basically progressing the feasibility engineering design. We're doing environmental technical investigation, those being geotechnical investigation, hydrology investigations, and all other investigation which we need to validate through the design process, utility and services being added. Preparing for environmental approvals, referrals, EPBs and state referrals are also being considered at this stage. So basically, before the construction, we need to lock all those in. Project area and planning requirements triggers, again, this is what it triggers. The feasibility design triggers all those requirements and how we basically capture going forward. So coming back to the Albury Council, these are the 5 locations basically which are impacted within the Albury Council by the project. Sorry, four locations. Murray Bridge is bridge modification. And Albury Station footbridge is bridge replacement. We need to replace the bridge because it doesn't comply with the required vertical clearances. Riverina Highway is a track lowering, and Wagga Road is a track lowering as well. So I'll hand over to Linton, who's the design manager, to go to the technical aspects.
Yes, so we've got the Murray River Bridge, which has been there for about 100 years or more. And currently we've got 5.2 metre clearance, so we need to achieve 7.1 metre clearance. So we've looked at different options, and the option that we're moving forward with now is to modify the existing structure, similar solution to what's been used in 1994, where the top bracing frames were extended to provide clearance for freight trains. And we'll need to move the track over by 600 millimetres. Yeah.
So broadly, there are two tracks on the bridge. Only one track is basically being used, and that will be used. So we realign that track to get better horizontal clearances.
Yep.
And basically on the top bracing, add vertical structural element so we can get the required vertical clearances.
Yep. At Albury Station footbridge, we've currently got 4.66 metres, and we need to build a new footbridge here to link into the freeway footbridge that's currently over the top of Hume Highway. We're currently looking at the detailed design, like what that would look like in relation to the station and how it relates to the station. We need to make it DDA compliant, so we'll be looking at ramps and stairs and making it more accessible. And we also have to look at the other end of the bridge as well, over on the eastern side of the bridge.
So broader issue with basically all these bridges are when we raise those bridges, basically it's getting the gradients required for the DDA compliant, because we are raising the height for more than 2 meters. Yep. And then we have to make a longer ramp basically to accommodate that.
Yeah, to get the right grades of the ramps.
Yep.
Yep. At Riverina Highway, which is near the old Bunnings store, we've got 6.03 metres. So we're short by about 900 mil or something like that. So we're looking at a track lowering solution at this location. So we're not replacing this bridge. We're going to be lowering the track. And one of the key things here is constructability and being able to undertake the work around train services. So we're looking at ways of being able to maintain train services and carry out the works at the same time, which we can achieve that with the single line operation.
That's right.
And all the works will occur within the rail corridor.
Yeah, so advantage with track lowering is basically we restricting in the rail corridor. We don't impact outside broader community. The issue is with rail operations, we get limited windows to work with. But in here, advantage is there are two tracks, so we can do single line operations, basically, realign the train operations.
And the last location, I'm sorry for the photo, I didn't have a good photo of this location, but it's a bit faded on the screen, is the Wagga Road Billy Hughes Bridge, which is again a 6.01 metre clearance, and we need 7.1 metre clearance under this bridge. This is a single line through here, so we won't be able to run trains and undertake the construction, so we'll only be able to undertake works when there's no trains running in this section of the line. We're considering all the underground services, drainage, geotech, collision load impact to the structure, and again all the works will occur inside the rail corridor. And yeah, this one's adjacent to farmland. And so where we are now, we're sort of still getting all the studies completed. We're still finishing design or feasibility design. We've been working with councils to better understand some of the issues around flooding and road issues and traffic patterns. And yeah, so we're still carrying on undertaking heritage studies and hydrology and geo and all that. And I don't know, did you want to speak to this one?
Again, part of the community stakeholder engagement, there are various forms of engagement we go through. Apart from our formal engagement with the council, there are one-to-one targeted conversations we are basically doing with the community, with the direct impacted people, and then we are doing a community session, broader community sessions we are planning to do for each council. So we are basically making aware, this is the council, how we do that, our plans with, so they are targeted wider community consultations and letter drops and things like that. So we are doing as part of our requirement. So at this stage, we basically make them aware. This is our current design thinking, if there are broader issues. And the intention is to come back in when our design is developed a little bit better. So basically, we got some investigations completed, we got noise and vibration assessments completed, we got some answers, more answers, and then we do come back and have another consultation with the community and council.
So basically, thank you for giving us the time to come and speak to you tonight. We tried to make it as short as we could make it, so we didn't take up too much of your time.
But any questions, anything, welcome.
So we've got a few questions. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. In regards to the Riverina Bridge project, where you anticipate running trains while you do the lowering of the track, what's your time? Can you guesstimate the length of that project? Might it be a month, 2 months?
Well, the way that we get shuts on the railway line once a year currently, but there's also other opportunities where we can work around train services. But again, that depends on the work that we need to undertake, like piling works or drainage works, what we can achieve while still running trains past the site. So we have to look at the constructability of being able to carry out each element of the project and how we can work around trains.
I think I'll basically explain what track lowering requires. We have to do piling, retaining walls to enable to dig the track and run the track. So there is a point in time when we complete the piling, when we dig the track, there is a point we can't return. We have to basically do all the formation subgrade works, lay the ballast track. There's a point of no return. That's the major, I think, window we have to work. So intention is we are doing a constructability. We have engaged Langeroog is our constructability advisor to look at how we can work. So what we have got from our customers, we got a bigger window once a year, which will be around 60, 70 hours, which is still being confirmed. These are early days. So first thing is we need to test what time we need. They are being challenged. So 60 hours is our base case, but again, 60, 70 hours is once a year that's been given to us. We are testing that, validating that. Intention is to do some of the works outside that. There are after last, before first, there are 8 to 10 hours windows. All along there will be weekend windows, basically 12, 15 hours windows to do some works all on those windows. And when we come and have our piling completed outside those windows, then basically the track works needs to happen on the bigger window. That's the intention. So in terms of the overall duration, it will run for a few months, but the impact on the train operation is very limited.
I think it's, I'm sure you can do it, but it's on its face, it's challenging to run trains through a project like
that's
that.
right.
That's right.
And that particular bridge is a relatively small area. It's about from me to you.
Yeah.
So
It's challenging, and Riverina is one of the challenging sites. We definitely appreciate that's the challenge over there. So again, this is part of the constructability. How we manage that. There are optimized solution we can put in for plant and machinery, things like that. Basically, can we replace the piling with the better design, optimize the solution, things like that? Yep. Can we do basically replace the ballast with direct fix? There are things can be done. But there is a challenge again. The constructability is part of the current design phase. When we come back, within 3 months' time, 2 months' time, we'll have the answer how we are doing that.
I'll be interested to see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that you're undertaking some further work and then we'll go back for further community consultation. But you mentioned part of that will be with regards to noise and vibrations. Can I confirm, please, that the noise and vibrations that you will be you are referring to would be the noise and vibrations during the construction, or will these trains be, or will the operation of the track be different after the work has been completed?
Okay. So I think this is a general concern. What does double stack containers means in terms of noise and vibrations? So there is one element is construction noise and vibration. The other element is operational noise and vibrations. So we got double stack container already operating in the western, basically around between Perth. There's already operating. So at the moment, the noise modeling is collecting the data of the existing trains running in the corridor. And then we got the data in the modeling. We can put those data. basically in each site what it does mean when we will run double stack containers. We'll have the answer whether it makes it worse. So there is a modeling guideline in place, New South Wales ring guideline, which we are referring to in terms of base monitoring levels, base requirement. So it's post. We are monitoring the noise for both construction and also for operations. Basically, double stack container, does it make it worse or just the same? Or if there is a case, we might have to look at some mitigations. We don't know. But what of a point we're saying at the moment is only assessing, monitoring, and modeling the data, and come back and look at what does it mean in terms of the details.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you. Just a comment first. It's a pity you're not working on the Melbourne to Albury. You could have the track nearly all the time. The issue for me is around the Billy Hughes Bridge. I'm not sure how you're going to do that when it's a single line track. But one of the problems with the Melbourne to Albury rail line was the, if you like, the inadequate weathering of the once the ballast was put down, and you created all these mud holes. So what I want to make sure is that in your design profiles that you don't make the same mistakes, because obviously that would be an absolute disaster, not only for the new freight trains, but obviously for the current passenger line trains that run on that route.
Yes, so basically, again, I'll come back. We are doing is making the track infrastructure compliant for the vertical and horizontal clearances. For us, basically, the Inland Rail project, the requirement is to make it accommodate those horizontal and vertical clearances. As such, we are not doing any works to the tank infrastructure because the track axle load capacity, we are not making it any worse. So whatever the current axle load capacity of the track is, the double stack containers will be running to that. But coming back to your point, how our works will, so in the area of our limited works like track lowering, if we are doing 1 kilometer track lowering in that area, that will be as per the new standard. So we'll rip out the whole basically formation, we'll put new formation in, we'll put the new ballast, basically the thicker capping layer, and put the new rail layer. So in the limited area of our track infrastructure, yes, we'll be compliant with the required track standards. But because our works are discrete element works, they are limited to discrete sections of the corridor, and they only required to achieve the horizontal and vertical clearance requirements. So that's the limit we have.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just follow up on? Yeah. Thank you. But if you're lowering the track, obviously you're going to have to lift the current track, remove the ballast, grade back down to one case 1.97 metres, and in the other case, 1.07 metres, and I think in the other case there's nearly 1.1 metres. Yeah. And then you're going to have to put your ballast down again. My concern is when you do that, we're not going to have the correct weathering for that, so that we don't create these mud holes and sinkholes that what's happened in the other track rebuild that we had been an absolute disaster for the whole of the residents in this area for the last 3 to 4 years.
Yes, no, we appreciate, definitely that's the concern, but that's what we are saying. Track loading, we'll rip the ballast, we basically put the new subgrade, we'll put the new formation, the new structural fill, and we'll upgrade the drainage as well in the whole section. So that section, because we are lowering, there's a potential of drainage, we are making it worse for the drainage. So we have to upgrade the drainage as well for the whole section. Yes, we'll make it.
So thank you very much, Dinesh and Linton, for your very thorough explanation about what's happening in our city.
Thanks for the time, and basically, we look forward to meeting you again.
And we look forward to a fast completion date.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Okay, thank you, councillors. We are now on to the reports, minutes of committees and working parties. 11, nothing to see there. And CM12, documents for sealing. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to move to move that council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of 2 signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant of Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure to A, Certificate of Authority under the Swimming Pools Act 1992 for Louise Wicks, Ranger, Michael Fallow, Ranger, Philip Palenkas, Graduate Environmental Health Officer. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Being no question or debate, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We have CM 13.1, Public CCTV Annual Evaluation Report. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to move, Mr Mayor, that Council endorse 1, the Public CCTV Evaluation Report 2018 to be received and noted. 2, CCTV operations be subject to a 2-yearly audit process with the inclusion of CCTV as an item for the internal audit plan to be presented to the AlburyCity at the October 2018 meeting. 3, the impact of the management of the CCTV system on specific council staff positions be reviewed and evaluated as a whole by the CCTV Working Party and presented for consideration by council's management executive as part of the organisational restructure. 4, the use of ongoing surveys to understand the trends in the community's perception of safety. 5, the continued promotion of the benefits of CCTV system in collaboration with the New South Wales Police in an effort to improve safety perceptions within the community. 6, further investigation of the need for CCTV in the Lavington CBD precinct with a subsequent report to council, and a further report to come to council as to the feasibility of placing mobile CCTV cameras at roundabouts in Lavington and North Albury in order to deter hoon driving. 7, an application for round 3 of the Safer Streets program be submitted. And 8, further consideration of the deployment of portable CCTV cameras as a deterrent.
Thank you. We need an additional report, or is additional report? An additional report?
I beg your pardon?
In your amendment, is it and? Or and a?
And a.
All right, beautiful.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful.
I might like to second it, Mr.
Very
Mayor.
excited. Councillor Vanderman.
I didn't have my button, but happy to second the motion.
What was
Mr.
green?
Chair.
Are you happy to second it?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Councillor Cameron, away you go. I have a question before you start. Did you wish to
No
have
problem
the
at all,
question?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Glacken, your question.
Yes, thank you. Through you, if I may, please.
Yes.
Can I check the parameters of the item that CCTV operations be subject to a 2-yearly audit process with the inclusion of CCTV as an item for the internal audit plan to be presented to ARIC at the October 2018 meeting? Can I confirm through you to the most relevant member of staff, please? Surely it would not be the intention that the audit of CCTV for Albury City Council would be part of the ongoing audit plan, if I may.
Ms Squire.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, I agree. Councillor Glacken, you're correct. I think the idea here is that we actually have it listed on our internal audit plan for an audit to be undertaken at the appropriate time.
Within council?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, question?
It's somewhat related, but not completely. Have we got any further with technology which is related to graffiti, such as dedicated sniffer technology?
Ms Grade?
With regard to the graffiti technology, it's something we're investigating at the moment, and we would need to get back to you.
Councillor Cohen, question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through to the relevant member of staff, please. Just to confirm that this audit and future investigation will also include crime statistics from New South Wales Police about long-term changes in trends, as well as the surveys of community perception of safety.
Ms Squire?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, certainly, and I would expect that information would also be contained in the annual report that comes back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, new to open debate.
On for my soliloquy.
Yes.
Thank you. Look, I'll keep it very simple. This has been a subject that I've been passionate about this term and last term of council. I've received widespread support from most of the councillors, particularly Councillor Doxey in the last term of council. I think the benefits of it now are becoming very apparent in the community and in law enforcement. There's great debate as to the efficacy of CCTV and whether it prevents crimes being committed, but whether or not it prevents crimes being committed, it certainly helps the police catch up with criminals and punish them. And that in itself, overall, we would hope, if prevailing doctrines about crime and punishment are correct, will ultimately serve as a deterrent, one would hope. Hoon driving is an absolute problem, particularly in North Albury and in Lavington. Most Thursday and Friday nights, Saturday nights, some Sunday nights and public holidays, they start as early as 6 p.m. in the evening and it continues all night. People driving mindlessly round and round and round roundabouts. It's a subject that we've spoke to the police about several times in our joint council and police meetings. I acknowledge that the police are doing the best they can to curtail it, but it is a very hard thing to curtail because people do it as a crime of opportunity. They do it for a relatively short period of time, a number of seconds sometimes, or a minute, and then they tear off away driving like a madman back to Wodonga or wherever they come from. So it is a real problem. It is a real problem, wherever they come from. Who knows where they come from, these mongrels. But the bottom line is the provision or the threat of having installed CCTV, and we have the technology, a bit like the $6 million man, we have the capacity, we have the ability to put up at random more or less or in a rotating pattern CCTVs, cameras which will reveal the registration of these clowns. If that doesn't serve as a deterrent, I don't know what else will. And it's something that I hope that we will receive a further report on, and it's something that we need to get happening for the residents and the amenity of the residents, particularly in North Albury and Lavington. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Another speaker for Councillor Vanderven.
Having unwittingly or not unknowingly seconded this motion, I just want to express my appreciation of the fact that the CCTV camera system appears to be having a desired result, not so much perhaps yet in the prevention of crime, but in the apprehension of those responsible for criminal activity. I'm interested in number 8, further consideration of the deployment of portable CCTV cameras as a deterrent, and because I know, and I have raised with council staff, a number of complaints from people who live in quiet neighbourhoods where their streets are being used as, rat runs at speed in residential areas, and these are the sorts of things that I want to make a note of that we should be targeting initially. If we're going to go with portable CCTV cameras, we should be targeting these places initially as hosts for these camera positions. A little note of caution, there are a lot of roundabouts in Lavington and North Albury, so I'm not sure whether there would be any, well, obviously there's some considerations around funding for the number of mobile CCTV cameras, especially if you're trying to cover all those roundabouts. But as a general concept, I fully support Councillor Cameron's motion and the additional parts of that motion that he put in. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderven. Councillor Doxey, Speaker 4.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Unlike Councillor Vanderven, it was my intention to second the motion. I don't know how I got mixed up. However, about 5 years ago, we had this discussion in the previous council. The main thing against it initially was who was going to pay. So it wasn't a matter of the councillors didn't want it, because we all know the value to our community. But eventually we got the money, and that was great, and we helped to contribute towards that. The facts are quite clear about the deterrent that it has had on the community, about perceptions, and the availability of the cameras and the recordings to help police to bring these culprits to law and punish as applicable. I think the issue that Councillor Cameron raised in relation to the roundabouts is worthy of note. it is a question now for staff to come up with how we look at that one and the costs and how we actually fund it. But again, I recommend this to my fellow councillors. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. Councillor Cameron, no further speakers for or against. Did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've said all that's necessary.
Thank you. On that note, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.2, the Draft Investment Policy and Procedure Review. Councillor Vandervan, did you wish to move this?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I would like to. Move that Council A acknowledge the public submissions received in response to the public exhibition of Albury City's Draft Revised Investment Policy and Procedure. B, endorse that Albury City's Draft Revised Investment Policy and Procedure be amended to reflect the New South Wales Treasury Corporation's suggested maximum investment exposure limits, with the exception of unrated authorised deposit-taking institutions. C, note the letters sent by Albury City's Acting General Manager of the New South Wales Treasury Corporation and the Office of Local Government expressing concern regarding the implications of prescribed investment policy exposure limits. D, endorse that Albury City maintain the level of its investments with WAW and the Hume Bank while further information is being sought from the New South Wales Government. E, adopt the proposed amendments to Albury City's exhibited draft revised investment policy and procedure. And F, receive a further update following the receipt of responses from the New South Wales Treasury Corporation and the Office of Local Governments to the concerns raised by Albury City regarding implications of the T Corp investment exposure limits.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, I have a question. Did you wish to open debate before I take the question?
No, I'll reserve my right to reply. Thank you.
Councillor Stutchbury, question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. I was concerned when reading this report that T Corp seems to have targeted WAW and Hume Bank because they didn't have AAA or AA or A ratings, and in fact they're unrated. I was just wondering if I could ask the relevant member of staff if he or she could recall back to the beginning of the global financial crisis, which from recollection was 2007, and was precipitated by the collapse of Lehman Brothers Bank in the USA. Could that person please advise us what the credit rating of Lehman Brothers was the day before it collapsed?
Mr Finlayson, are you up to date with your history?
Vaguely, Mr Mayor. Yes, so the GFC was caused by the collapse of Lehman Brothers, but there was collateralised debt obligations was the investment product, which was also at the heart of that issue. And I believe that had a relatively high credit rating by Standard & Poor's, which has been the subject of class actions as a result of the global financial crisis.
Thank you. You happy with that, Councillor?
No, that answer was most unsatisfactory, so I'll answer it for him. They were rated AA the day before they collapsed. They were rated AA, so not by T Corp. So essentially, T Corp want WAW and Hume Bank to be rated something closer to what Lehman Brothers was rated in order for us to invest in them. Would that be the case, Mr Finlayson?
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, effectively T Corp is requesting councils consider applying a framework similar to what the New South Wales government applies when it invests the state government's funds. That's the principle by which T Corp are raising this, and the conversations to date highlight that that's their primary concern. And of course, through Council's Acting General Manager, we've highlighted the implications of that policy approach to regional and rural communities in particular.
Councillor Stutchbury, do you finish your line of questioning?
No, Mr Mayor, I have another question for the most relevant member of staff. From my reading of the report, if we, as a council, don't reduce our investment portfolio with these two institutions down to $250,000, we're liable to be charged a higher interest rate for T Corp loans. Would that be a correct interpretation of what was written in the report?
Mr. Finlayson?
Councils that have applied to T Corp for loan funding in recent times have been requested to amend their investment policies to at least to over time reduce their investments with unrated institutions such as the Hume Bank and WAW. It's not that T Corp would charge a high interest rate, it's just that T Corp wouldn't provide the loan financing. So councils would instead seek loan financing through the major banks, for example, which charge a higher interest rate than what T Corp charges local governments in New South Wales.
How did that go, Councillor Stutch? Were you comfortable?
I do have one more question, if I might, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. I was wondering if Mr. Finlayson or someone else in council staff might remind us of what the ACCC defines as third line forcing.
Mr. Finlayson, are you across that one?
I'm not familiar with how the ACCC's definition of third line forcing, but my own understanding is that when one supplier directs a customer to purchase from another supplier in order to get those services.
You comfortable?
Well, it wasn't a full definition, but it's close enough. So, would Mr. Finlayson or anyone else in staff care to comment on the possibility that this demand from T Corp is somewhat approaching third line forcing?
Mr. Finlayson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if it is third line forcing. However, T Corp is not only an advisory service; they also do act as have a brokerage service and do have products which councils can invest with, which meet their investment framework requirements.
Comfortable?
No, but I've grown weary of this line of questioning, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions? I have Councillor Glycan.
Sorry, did you say
Question?
my name? I missed that, sorry. Must have been because I was coughing. I do apologise. Thank you.
No worries.
Through you, if I may, to the most relevant member of staff, two questions. One is that my understanding is that there is a reason as to why the example given in the letter from the Acting General Manager to the Office of Local Government is that the banks such as, or institutions such as Bendigo, the Hume and WAW do not have a rating because they don't meet certain criteria, and part of that is to do with size. That's number one, if I could just have that clarified. And also that my understanding, and I'll keep talking while I'm not coughing at the moment, my understanding is that the limitation would be down to $250,000 invested, reason being, and the justification from the T Corp is that the $250,000 is guaranteed by the government. So if I could just have those clarified, because I think it goes some ways to justifying why T Corp have mandated what they're...
Mr. Finlayson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the ratings of the Bendigo Bank is, for example, by Standard & Poor's, lower than that of the major banks. So Standard & Poor's have assessed that the Bendigo Bank is not as stable in terms of its long-term outlook in a financial crisis as the major banks. However, with the WAW and Hume Bank, it's I expect it's not that they've been rated as unrated. I think it's because they have not sought to be rated, in that it's not necessary for their business model to attract customers and clients. With respect to the government guarantee, my thinking is why T Corp are comfortable with councils investing with unrated institutions up to $250,000 is that because that investment is guaranteed and there is no loss in the event of a financial crisis, and that some institutions being impacted by that and the ability to return investments to customers such as councils.
Thank you.
Council? Yep. Councillor Van der Ven, question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to continue Councillor Stutchbury's line of questioning on the basis that if you wanted to not put too fine a point on this, that basically that the T Corp are actually blackmailing this council into reducing investments into Hume Bank and WOW. And I'm just wondering if the seconder of my motion would include an item G, I think is the next letter in the alphabet required, to send a letter to the ACCC to find out whether what T Corp are doing is actually legal.
Councillor Thurley, are you comfortable to do that?
I need the words, but we've already expressed some concern directly to T Corp. Whether this is a useful step, I don't know. I'll need to see the words. If the words are that we request advice from the ACCC regarding the legality of the positions advanced by T Corp.
Wording I would be
comfortable with that.
Into it.
I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From the perspective, Mr Mayor, of and I haven't yet. I'm waiting. I'll take an opportunity for a right of reply. But on the basis of the amendment, it's a situation where not only are we investing with somebody that has a fantastic credibility in the banking industry. In fact, I'm not sure how. The Hume Bank could have got to be a Hume Bank instead of a Hume Building Society without the imprimatur of the relevant authorities, begs the question. But not only do we, we've never had any issues with this, we're also supporting large institutions in our community. And I think that for the T Corp to be suggesting that we can't do that anymore, I think is an absolute disgrace.
So you're happy with G,
To
Councillor
seek advice from ACCC regarding the legality of the T Corp conditions, yes, I'm happy with that. If Councillor Thurley is.
Councillor Thurley?
Yep.
Comfortable? Thank you. Councillor King, you have a question.
A question through you, Mr Mayor, the relevant member of staff. Is the relevant member of staff aware if WAW or the Hume have been summoned to the Financial Royal Commission?
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not aware of either WAW or the Hume Bank being summoned to the Royal Commission.
Thank you. Councillor King, did you have any further?
The relevant member of staff aware of any of the other financial institutions that we bank with being summoned to the Financial Royal Commission?
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe each of the major banks have had some involvement with the Royal Commission.
Thank you.
Nothing further, thanks.
Thank you. No further speakers for questions. I'm happy to take a speaker for Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm speaking for the motion because I think our staff's response is appropriate. And as my fellow councillors' questions have alluded to, I think this is an absolutely unfair restriction from the state government on local councils. We've been democratically elected, and it should be up to us to choose if we want to invest with institutions that benefit our local community or that benefit the environment. This is significantly impacting our ability to make those decisions independently. In my opinion, it's overreach from the state government.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Thurley?
I agree entirely with those last comments. This council has for many years invested wisely and properly, has met all appropriate protocols and procedures, has never suffered any significant loss because of our investment procedures, and this, in the words of Councillor Con, is significant overreach from the state government. It was also done, as I understand, with little or no consultation with local government, and that is a pathetic indictment of the government and of T Corp in general. If you want to introduce these and affect small community banks which operate in the community, for the community, then you should consult with communities and not just make these decisions from a head office somewhere. So I support the motion, but I really need further strong action to be taken with T Corp and the local government New South Wales, because this is just not an appropriate thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There being no further speakers for or against, I just might add that I think it is critical for us as regional councils and smaller councils to support our smaller credit institutions, as they're the ones that take the risk and provide services to our smaller towns and hamlets. The big four banks are withdrawing their services at whim, and certainly the crux of this issue is the current policy of T Corp reflective of policy on the run by government? And it would appear that the issues adjoining this are certainly the fossil fuel investment and other investments that are preventing councils from doing the right thing. So I support the motion, and I look forward to the responses from the ACCC. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close debate?
Just to sum up, Mr Mayor, I take on board all of your comments, Councillor Con, Councillor Thurley's comments, and obviously Councillor Stutchbury's concerns. The issues here are around our local community. They're around an organisation, a government organisation, bullying people to comply with their new regulations, and I think that requires a backlash from us, and I think that what we've put in place tonight will provide that opportunity. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.3, the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre Major Development Plans. I need a mover, thanks. Councillor Vandervan.
Happy to move, Mr Mayor, that Council 1 receive a note to report, 2 undertake a have a say process to seek community feedback on stage 1 and 2, acknowledging that stage 1 is the priority and stage 2 is subject to a future detailed business case analysis. 3, receive a further report on the outcomes of the have a say process and next steps. And 4, authorise preparation and lodgement of grant funding application for stage 1 concepts should opportunities arise in the near future.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to open debate?
We had the discussions around this project last week, and I think that what we're doing here is an appropriate upgrade of an institution within AlburyCity that provides sport and recreation facilities for a huge number of people. It's an ageing facility that needs the upgrade, and I think we would expect full support from the community through the have a say process for this, and I look forward to the future reports. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through to the relevant member of staff, please. I received representation from the PCYC in East Albury, who are managing land adjacent to the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre, and they've expressed interest in collaborating with us and having a further say in the stage 2. Just wondering if council staff have had contact with the PCYC.
Ms Scrode.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is that we have, and we certainly would want to continue discussions with the PCYC. It's a really good opportunity for us to work together and to make sure that our plans align.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Crode. There being no further questions, Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.4, the Water Mains Cleaning Program, contract number 18/01700. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion. that Council accept the tender provided by H&S Maintenance Proprietary Limited for contract number 18/01700 for the mains cleaning of Zone A of Albury's water reticulation system for the lump sum of $86,899.62,
Thank you.
including GST.
Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you. Happy to second that motion.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
No, it's an important part of what we need to be able to do to ensure good, clean water for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to speak for the motion?
I will briefly, Mr Mayor. Before reading this report, I didn't know anything about air scouring water mains, but I'm pleased that this option's been considered by our staff. I think it's particularly appropriate during a drought that we've found an option for cleaning our mains that's less water and labour intensive. So I commend the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor, to the most relevant member of staff. When reading this report, I discovered that the concern from members of the public was that water becomes cloudy at certain times. Could I be advised as to whether drinking this cloudy water is in fact harmful to health?
Mr Harbrow.
Through you, Mr Mayor, AlburyCity maintains a drinking water supply that meets the criteria set out in the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines, and we have no reason to think otherwise.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Just a follow-up question then, Mr Mayor. Are we therefore spending $86,000 plus doing something that doesn't really need to be done on the basis of health?
Mr Holler.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we provide a service by providing a clean and safe drinking water supply to our customers. This air scouring will reduce the likelihood of discoloured water appearing in our reticulation system, and that will therefore provide benefits to our customers.
Councillor Stutchbury, comfortable with that?
Well, no, but I've grown weary of this line of questioning as well, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
Yes, indeed, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
As we will have gleaned from the report, the cleaning of the water mains was a process that was done on a very regular basis, and I remember watching it done on a regular basis as a child. I agree with Councillor Con. It's good that a new method has been developed that uses less water to do so. It's also good that this process has come in under budget. But it is, as I stated earlier in my opening remarks, an important part of what we need to be able to do to provide water to our community. If this is not done, the sediment does build up, and it is important to ensure that this is done on a regular basis. Perhaps not as regular as it used to be done when I was a child, however, it is important that it is done on a regular basis. This is part of our program for AlburyCity, and it's important for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.5 JC King Sports Pavilion Construction. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A accepts the tender from Connolly Construction Services for contract number 17/02104 JC King Park Sports Pavilion for the lump sum amount of $2,008,560, including GST, and B, reallocate funds in the order of $605,000, including GST, by deferring 3 projects from 2018-19 to 2019-20. The projects identified are Lake Hume Public Toilets, Albury Play Spaces Strategy Works, and Park Signage.
Thank you. Seconder is Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Connor, a question. Do you wish to open debate?
I'm happy to wait till after the questions.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, a question.
Yes, if I may, through you, to the most relevant member of staff. I'm conscious of the fact that $605,000 needs to be found to make this, to enable this project to proceed. I believe it's important to allow this project to proceed. However, noting that we're having, therefore, to find this funding from other projects that we would otherwise have undertaken, I wonder, is it possible for Council to work with the successful tenderer to perhaps massage the final costings and program of works, the complete package of works, to endeavour to find some of that $605,000 within the build budget. Would that be something that we could ask the staff to work with the whomever that successful tenderer might be after we've taken this vote? Following discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Wallo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There are opportunities for this project to be revised. However, the savings which council staff would envisage would be saved there are not in the order of magnitude of the $605,000 being sought. We would just point out that the three prices submitted by the tenderers are within 10% of each other, which represents the commercial value of this project as it stands.
Councillor Cleggan.
Thank you for that answer, and I appreciate the way in which it's given. What I really, and I accept that you were answering my question, what I would really like to ask is it possible for the scope of the whole project to be reviewed such that some things may be massaged, or and it might be that they be put off for a little while to try and pare down the overall amount? And I appreciate that clearly it's a fair tender from the tenderers for this project.
Mr. Wallo.
The design as it currently stands actually meets the current demand of JC King Park. If we were to reduce the footprint or build the pavilion in a staged fashion, we would not be able to provide the services to our netball players and our netball association, which this current design does provide. So as it stands, we can meet the demand. However, a redesign, or as I said, a construction period that was split, for instance, the pavilion into two separable portions, would not meet the requirements as they currently stand.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through one follow-up question. With the Lake Hume public toilets specifically, is it possible to put that work off? Will there be people out there being caught short in that location? I accept park signage, etc., can be held off. Possibly the play space strategy works, etc. But the Lake Hume public toilets, how critical was that project? Thank you.
Mr. Wallo.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The Lake Hume public toilets would form part of a broader strategy for that precinct. So until that strategy has been finalised and endorsed, the public toilets would not be able to be constructed. So therefore, the public toilets, the play spaces strategy and the park signage were all highlighted as in our works program as occurring towards the end of this budgetary cycle. Therefore, if they were used to assist in funding the JC King Pavilion, they would be more easily able to be placed into future budgetary cycles.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you to the relevant member of staff. Just got a question about what the initial budget was and what the actual quotes came in. All of them were significantly higher, and I mean significantly. How did council sort of get it so wrong in their initial estimation?
Mr. White.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very fortunate to have Council Officer David Armstrong here, who's been involved in this project from its inception, which is quite a number of years ago now. And David has kindly accepted the offer to speak to that question. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong, do you wish to make your way up to the front mic? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The budgets were actually made up of some square metre rates, which we had on some concept plans, which we had done as the initial stage. That didn't factor in some of the unknowns, which was around the foundations of the building and some of the materials. So That's why a lot of the costs are higher than what we budgeted for.
Councillor King.
Thank you for that response. So about 1.5 million was the initial estimate, round figures, and then one of the quotes was 2.1. So 600,000. That's nearly half again of the budgeted amount. So did we do any geo testing prior to? And I know that's quite a Lavington Sports Club question of boring and getting some soil testing done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, but that was done after the initial estimates were done. We had funding in the budget, and then we went to detailed design. As part of that detailed design process, we've done extensive geotech around that site, just knowing the actual site and what its previous uses were. So hence why the foundations of the building are fairly significant.
I'm none the wiser, but okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Okay, we have a speaker to open the debate, Councillor Conn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge the representatives of the Albury Netball Association who are in the gallery today, who have been working very hard behind the scenes on this project for years. Look, I'm as disappointed as the other councillors that this project's gone over budget, and I understand that it is due to the soil conditions and the need to dig concrete piers up to 2 metres deep for the foundations. I confirmed with Ms Squire earlier today that the postponed items can be re-included in our works program if we can find budget savings in the October quarterly budget review, which Council has done previously. So I remain hopeful that these projects can be re-included. But the Lavington Sports Ground project had a significant budget overrun, and at no stage were we discussing abandoning that project. I think that it would be absolutely hypocritical of us to not let this project go ahead because of budget overrun, especially since this is for a sport that's predominantly played by women. I think we have to give the netball club the same sort of leeway as we gave the Lavington Sports Ground and allow this project to go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Speaker against, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to move an amendment, and the amendment I move is that the motion as put by Councillor Conn, except that A shall read, accepts the tender from Premier Building and Construction for $1,897,297.99 for contract number 17/02104 and so forth, the rest as it is now.
Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Vandervan.
No, I didn't. No, not a seconder. I was wanting to speak for.
Yep. You can just repress that one on tape.
Yeah.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
So we're dealing with the amendment now. Okay, can we get the amendment up on the board, thanks? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Can I say from the outset that I strongly support these works being carried out, and I strongly support the project. There's no question that it is one of the largest, if not the largest, participative sport in Albury, played by both men and women. It should be supported. I want to point out further that the Albury Netball Association has made a $440,000, or will make a $100,000 contribution to this project. That is a very significant amount of money and a very significant contribution. And I would say to other sporting groups in our community who advocate for projects for their particular sports that they should embrace the attitude shown by Albury Netball Association and consider anteing up like these people have done. It's very much to their credit. It's not a case of this group coming to council begging for state, federal and council money, but they've actively seeded the project themselves. So full marks to them, and this is a worthy project which very much needs to be supported by council and should be supported by council, and I'll certainly support it. What I do think, though, I take issue with the fact it is a fact that we have overrun on this project. That's the purpose of tonight's motion, to deal with that very subject. Premier Building and Construction Proprietary Limited are well known in the community and the broader community for their work, particularly, and are becoming somewhat of a specialist on doing sporting facilities. I don't believe there can be any justifiable criticism of their qualitative or quantitative assessments. I think that we need to save every dollar that we can, given the financial situation in this particular matter, and I think there is a very strong argument, given that their work, in my view, certainly, is demonstrably satisfactory in other areas, to have them contract for this project. It is a fact that it is less than a 10% saving, but that is a saving nevertheless. And I would urge my fellow councillors to look at the numbers here, because the whole purpose of tonight's motion is to find a way that council can fiscally support this very worthy project. It seems incongruous to me then that we have a bid that is lower and we are not prepared to go with that bid, given that that contractor is demonstrably, in my view, capable of delivering the project to a high quality. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. We're just looking at B and determining that B needs to be altered as well to reflect the balance of the allocation of funds.
I see. Yeah, well, I'm happy to move that once the calculation's done.
Yeah, well,
mathematics is not my friend, I'm afraid.
It'd be 495,000.
495,000, so it is a significant saving.
So I would certainly intend that would happen, yes.
You're happy for that to happen, Councillor Stutchbury, that alteration? Yes, that's a nod. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Speaker against, Councillor Conn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly have no personal opinion about any of the tenderers for this project, so my comments are based on the report that we've been provided by the council staff, which was that referee feedback from the company suggested by Councillor Cameron was marginal in terms of communication, cooperation, and importantly, when we're talking about cost variations, which is a real concern. The report then states on page 64 that due to the high public visibility of this sports pavilion, it's crucial that the preferred contractor be selected not based on price alone. And I have to say I agree with that. That's my justification for supporting the original recommendation and not this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This proposed amendment of Councillor Cameron's represents a potential saving of around $110,000. And reading through the report, I was unable to glean from what was written why Connolly was selected over Premier to the value of $110,000. There was some talk about referees' reports and things, but it didn't seem like anything particularly significant. So I would have thought that the $110,000 is well worth considering as a saving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have read the staff reports. There are reasons why their recommendation was made. This is less than 5%, or around in the order of 5%. And I guess I'd probably need to say that on previous occasions we have chosen higher price tenderers for various reasons. And in this occasion we are choosing a higher price tenderer because our staff have recommended to us that the quality of the product we will get is higher and better, and therefore I cannot support the amendment.
Thank you. No further speakers for. Is Councillor King?
Yes, I'm speaking for the motion from Councillor Cameron. I think it's all about project management. You know, the project has been drawn up. It's significant, and it's about monitoring. And I would like to just support this, that the successful tenderer, the lowest tenderer, has put in a genuine bid. You know, they've got significant runs on the board with similar types of activities, and again, I read the report and I couldn't see that there are the issues regarding communication that were things like I mentioned were marginal, that it should affect the building and construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Yes, to speak against the amendment, but absolutely not the motion that was presented to us, the original recommendation. I am conscious of the fact that very soon in this council chambers, we as councillors will be dealing with a project where we, a number of months ago, determined that we didn't like the design of a certain part of infrastructure for the Lavington sports ground, and we decided that we would send that back to be redesigned because we wanted a better finish, we wanted a better product than had been put forward. And part of the reason was that we said we shouldn't provide the cheapest option for these sporting facilities. We needed to provide a good option for these sporting facilities. And I concur with councillors who have spoken against this amendment, because we need to make sure that this facility is good. We are putting a lot of money into this. We have waited a very long time. All of my time on council, we have been looking at redesigning and redeveloping JC King Park. It has been years. I've been on council a very long time. And I think we need to ensure that this facility is absolutely good. Not just okay, but really good. A lot of people play this sport in this location. It's a long-term development issue, and we need to ensure that we get this right now. So I cannot support the amendment and can only support the original motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. I have another speaker against, Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak against the amendment and for the original motion. I'm really pleased at the standard of debate on this particular issue, because I think that all of the points raised by the people who have spoken against this amendment have been extremely valid. There's the issue around the visibility of that particular sports facility, as far as it's on a main thoroughfare in Albury, and I think we need to put our best foot forward in producing a facility that is, is going to be the home of somewhere around 11 or 12,000 netball, regular netball participants. I think it's also around the fact that the staff recommendations suggest that the Connolly are able to provide a better finish in their estimation to this particular building, but it's also a reflection of the fact that Councillor Cameron said that they were putting $440,000 into this project. In actual fact, the Albury Netball Association are putting $550,000 in over the long term because of the $110,000 interest-free loan that they're taking out that will be repaid. So I think that their desires and their wishes for that building to look Mickey Mouse also should be taken into account, and I believe that the discussions around this particular building with council staff have formed some part of the staff recommendations. So I'm against the amendment and for the motion. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Doxey, Speaker against.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be voting against this motion and vote for the original motion. And I think my fellow councillors that are going to vote against this particular motion or the recommendation, have summed it up pretty well. This is a high-profile project. We need to get it right. And congratulations to the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, there are no more speakers for or against the amendment. I'd just like to say that it is credit to the Netball Club and certainly to the players and the supporters that they've been able to raise this significant money, and it's a lot of money, over $500,000 for a sporting organisation. But I might add that it is really important for us to try and soften the blow in terms of what that looks like and the ongoing cost of their loan, ongoing cost to the community in terms of the expenditure on this item. I might also refer to the report that the report says that the three builders build to a high standard. It doesn't say one's more superior than the other. So I just wish to clarify that, because the issue with the current amendment or the company selected is an issue about communication, cooperation, and sometimes variations on the price. So it's not a standard issue. It is both three of them provide buildings of high standard, and they've all built buildings on behalf of council, and need I say that I don't believe that we've had too many problems with them. So I just needed to clarify that fact, and I just believe that it is, again, we are responsible for, in some cases, providing high standard buildings at reduced costs. And it doesn't mean that this job is going to be done any less better, it just means we're going to save money. So I would support the amendment on that basis. Councillor Cameron, did you wish to close debate on the amendment?
I'll keep this very simple, Mr Mayor. There is no credible argument to be made that Premier Building and Construction cannot build this facility to a high standard. They have built a plethora of very good, cost-effective and excellent sporting facilities in this city and more broadly in this community and in the cross-border community. They are a professional and major building and construction firm in this community, and there is no credible argument that can be made that they would not complete the project satisfactorily. We have an opportunity here to save around $100,000 of ratepayers' money. I would simply say that if councillors think that that's not important, or they think that that's not a substantial amount of money, then they risk being out of touch with the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. On that note, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment is lost. Thank you, councillors. Now we're dealing with the original motion. If you please, ladies. And Councillor Con, we've completed debate. Oh no, we've still got a speaker for in the original motion. So we've got it up there. Councillor, I'm happy to take your speaker for on the original motion. Thanks.
It's just a minor point, Mr Mayor. The fact of the matter is that the staff report identified that all tenderers could build the project to a certain standard, and I accept the evaluation and the words written in their report. I never said that saving money wasn't important. However, this is a complicated project, and the reason why we got to this stage with this project is because of the site, and those points were raised in the report and raised again by Mr Armstrong, that this is a difficult site and there will be complications in this build without any doubt at all. If you thought Lavington Sports Ground was a difficult site, this will be a difficult site, as was Mumma. And part of the evaluation awarded the contract to this company because it was felt that they provided a better overall level of surety, and that's the reason I'm voting for the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Stutcher, you wish to speak for this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to speak for the original motion just to ensure that members in the gallery as well as my fellow councillors don't think that I'm all for this netball redevelopment. I've spent more time than I care to remember at that netball park, often on wintry Monday nights, and yeah, I think it could do with an upgrade, and it's got to look pretty good. In fact, I think it's got to look better than Mickey Mouse, Councillor Van der Ven. I think it's got to look schmick. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. There being no further debate, Councillor Con, do you wish to close debate?
Only very briefly, Mr Mayor, to say that I also pay rates in Albury, and I'm happy for my rates to be used on this project.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion on that note. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Congratulations, ladies. Okay, CM 13.6, Development Application 10.2018.3603 Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, I move that Council A receive and note the contents of this report, and B, grant consent to Development Application 10.2018.36032.1 for a multi-dwelling housing development comprising 3 detached dwellings, earthworks, retaining walls and strata subdivision of the dwellings with no common property at 15 Nevada Street, Springdale Heights, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included in this report at attachment 3 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to open debate?
I've had a look at the documentation around this development, Mr Mayor, and there doesn't appear to be any particular issues around it that warrants exhaustive discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Glackton wishes to speak for.
Sorry, happy to speak for, but I don't need to. That's fine. I was simply wanting to second.
Okay. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am speaking for the motion, but I suppose with the acknowledgement that this development meets our current requirements. It's my personal view that these units are far too close to each other and that this isn't a good quality of development for our growth areas moving into the future. But having said that, I believe that the solution to this issue is in the DCP review and what requirements we'll put on future developments, and it's not my position to oppose this particular one.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to close debate?
Very briefly, in closing debate, Mr Mayor, I'd have to agree with Councillor Con that there did seem to be a lot of roof area, not much grass area in the development, but that's the way that it is, and she's quite right. We need to wait for the new DCP to come out. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, we have a division. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Van der Ven. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We have CM 13.7, Development Application 10.2018.35948.1. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I'm just trying to catch up on my paperwork. I'm up to page 108. I can't find it. I'd like to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receive and note the contents of the report, and B grant consent to development application 10.2018.35948.1 for a multi-dwelling housing development comprising of 5 detached dwellings, earthworks, retaining walls, and a 6-lot community title subdivision at 66 Royce Crescent, Lavington, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included in the report at attachment 3 to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley. Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the report is very detailed. Clearly all the reports that come to Council with regards to planning are very detailed, and I'm happy that we support this.
Thank you. Councillor Con, you wish to speak for this motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only to make exactly the same comment. These units are slightly further apart than the ones in the previous DA, but most of the area between them is paved driveway. If we continue to build units like this across our city, we're going to end up with drainage problems from paving everything, heat issues from lack of shade, etc. I'm not going to oppose this particular development, but I think we need to consider if we want developments like this across the whole of our growth areas.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Right. CM 13.8, Development Application 745 Centre Road, Lavington, 10.2016347774. For modification of consent. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Cameron.
Could I foreshadow that I'll have a question if I get a seconder after this, Mr Mayor?
Yes.
I move that Council A receive and note the report for modification of development consent 10.2016.34774.3 Lavington Sports Ground Redevelopment Stage 1 and B, grant the modification request and issue development consent for 10.2016.34774.4, subject to the conditions contained in that draft modification determination attachment 3.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, you got a question?
Yeah, I'd like to know if it's possible to be known, and I appreciate there's known knowns and known unknowns in this caper, to quote dear old Rumsfeld. Do we know when a likely start date might be for the substantive works? And by substantive, I mean the bulk of the works out there. And secondly, how long is it projected and allowed for that will take? Is there any, in the worst case scenario, is there any danger of it running into not this, the next year's O&M Grand Final? Through you to the most appropriate member of staff.
Yes, we're determining that. Ms Grade, have you across that one?
Through you, Mr Mayor. At the moment, not at the moment, the works are estimated to finish at the end of 2019, December, so that is the final completion date. So we'll be working within those timelines and making sure that the projects align.
Is there potential for at least this sorry. I think we've all had the flu at some point recently. Come closer then. Is there I guess the substance of what I'm asking is, with the associated works going on at Lavington Oval in total, is there any danger that next year's O&M might be impacted?
Grand final. Through you, Mr Mayor. All efforts will be done by staff to ensure that we meet project deadlines and that we work according to the project plan and that we finish in the end of December 2019. Any more than that, I can't tell you.
Ms Squire,
Through you, Mr Mayor. Sorry, just to, I guess, wrap up the response to your question, Councillor Cameron. Our discussions with the O&M, we've been really clear in saying to them that we're not anticipating having the O&M Grand Final at Lavington Sports Ground in 2019. Right. Our intention was always to look to bid for the 2020 event for the very reason that we need to make sure that all aspects of the project and the facility in its entirety are ready for an event of that significance. So certainly nothing to be concerned about for 2019. So we should certainly be ready for 2020 if you're talking about the O&M Grand Final.
Thank you. I apologise through you, Mr Mayor. I may have obviously got out of sequence with my years there. They're all running together as age progresses.
Did you wish to open debate on this item, Councillor Cameron?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No? Okay, there appears to be no questions or further debate. I'm happy to put the motion. Division, all those in favour of Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor King, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Glacken and Councillor Vanderman. And those against, Councillor Con. The motion is carried. Thank you. And we move on to the next motion. Is 13.9, development application 514 Hannah Street, Hamilton Valley, 10.2016.348884.2. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A receive and note the report for modification of development consent 10.2016.348884.1 Sports Ground redevelopment stage 2, and B, grant the modification request and issue development consent 10.2016.348884.2, subject to the conditions contained in the draft modified determination in attachment 3.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to open debate?
Merely to say that I'm not really concerned with the 2019 O&M Grand Final is going to be played, and to make the comment that, am I permitted to make a comment? I will make it anyway, and I can be criticised for it. A question to Councillor Con. Why would she vote against the previous?
I don't think that's appropriate at this point,
Without
Councillor Stutchbury.
Without entering into the debate.
Councillor Stutchbury, please.
We're wasting it.
Okay, there's no opening debate. There are no further debates, no questions. Happy to put the motion by way of division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thiel and Councillor Vandervan. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.8, development application 745 Centre Road, Lavington, 10.2016.34774.4. Thank you, councillors. I think I just did that one. I did Hannah Street. I've done that one too. Gosh, I'm going too fast. Officer report for noting 14.1, corporate credit card policy and procedure. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council receive and note Albury City's updated corporate credit card procedure and be endorsed that Albury City's corporate credit card policy June 2012 be rescinded.
Thank you. Seconded, please. Councillor Vandervan.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you have a question before you start debate?
As a member of ARIC, a question I would like to ask is our credit card policy in line with similar councils? And B, have we had any recorded significant breaches of the policy in the last 4 years?
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the revised credit card procedure reflects suggestions made by our external auditors when they've reviewed our procurement practices. In terms of breaches of the policy, I'm not aware of any significant breaches in the last 4 years.
Councillor Thurley, are you comfortable with that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Vandervan, you have a question?
Just a quick question to the relevant member of staff through you. It says here that Albury City's council's payment of expenses and provision of facilities policy details the council will provide the mayor a corporate credit card to be used for council-related business to a maximum value of $5,000. What time period does that reflect? Is it a
what time? Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's the wording in the current policy. In practice, the limits apply for a transaction and for a monthly limit. So it's a monthly limit of $5,000, and so the mayor could make a single transaction for up to $5,000 for the month if they desired.
Could the wording reflect that fact then? Is it, I'm not sure whether it's important or whether that's reflected in the updated policy, Mr Mayor. So,
well, I haven't exceeded that or spent that much.
We're not suggesting that you have, Mr Mayor, but what I'm suggesting is that we get a greater clarity for that particular policy.
Mr Finlayson, your view?
With the credit card procedure, there's no reason why that can't be amended. With respect to the broader council facilities policy, I suggest that's taken into account the next time that policy is reviewed.
which will be after the next mayoral election, I take it. Is
Or
that right?
earlier as required.
Okay. Councillor Vanderman?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to continue opening debate on the item?
I'm fine with it as it stands.
Okay. There being no further questions or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against the motion is carried. Investment balances 14.2 July 2018. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the recommendation as a motion the council receive and note the investment balances report for the month of July 2018.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second that motion.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Over speaker 4, Councillor Cameron.
Sorry.
Just late on the buzzer. There are no speakers for or against. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Monthly Development Statistics, July 2018. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Cameron.
Move that council receive, note and accept the information on the monthly development statistics for July 2018 report.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak to that?
Nope.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak?
Just to note that we seem to have a continuing robust activity in the development of our local government area, and I think that that's pleasing to note.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Just to reiterate, I think the process is working quite well, and Mr. Keys and his staff are working their way through this process, and it's a fairly transparent and onerous task, but thank you for your support. I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 14.5, the Service Efficiency Review Program. Oh no, 14.4, the AlburyCity Operational Plan 2017-2018 report. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I move that council receive and note the 2017-2018 operational plan report.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cameron, wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 39, in relation to a leading community, I have a couple of questions for the relevant member of staff. The KPIs in relation to the new subscribers, the target was 20 per month and the achieved was 0. That's my first question. The second question moves down the page a little bit, and it gets down to the KPIs in relation to reach across all Facebook profiles. 600,000 was the target per quarter. We achieved 724 to a 0 outcome. I thought that was quite a substantial and a long reach, I guess. The next one was engagement rate across the social media profiles. 3 per month, we achieved 2, 80%. I'd just like a bit of clarification, if I may, please, from the relevant member of staff about those targets and why we're chasing those targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Squire.
Page 39.
Page 39.
4.1.
4.1.
Thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So with regard to the first query, that KPI relates to new subscribers to the AlburyCity News. So we do have a target of 20 per month, but for that month, obviously, we didn't actually achieve any new subscribers. And new subscriptions vary from month to month, as you can well imagine. So there are times where we don't achieve it. There are times where we certainly exceed it. But if it's helpful to councillors, I'm happy to give an overview of the targets for the year post tonight's meeting, the targets for the year and what was actually achieved, if that gives a broader picture. And down to the online communication, social media. And again, as you can see there, the first KPI is around new followers across all platforms. What was achieved was well in excess of the target. The reach across all Facebook profiles, I must admit, Councillor Doxey, I will need to seek advice from the communications team in relation to that. That certainly appears to be an unusual result. So again, if I could take that one on notice, I'm happy to follow up. And certainly in terms of the final one, the engagement rate across all platforms, the target of 3 and the achievement of 2, as I said, I would expect would be a variance. But I'm happy to provide you with an overview of the annual figures, just with regard to those couple of items, to give you a much more broader picture.
Mr Mayor, please.
Yeah. Did you have any further?
Thank you for that update and the information that's going to be forthcoming. Can I assume in that case, because I noticed the last news from Albury didn't have the mayor on the front, is that the reason why there was a drop in the rate? Thank you anyway, Mr Mayor.
Just one question from me in relation to the performance scheduling, and it's probably for engineering. The red faces seem to be attached to a lot of the water and sewer projects. I'm just wondering what that is a result of. If you can give us an update on that particular proposition, please, Greg.
Through you, Mr Mayor, you're right, there are a few red faces in the water and wastewater section. What we've found recently with our planning and our design is that there's been significant hurdles put in place with regards to getting the appropriate permits. For instance, the Nexus sewer has been waiting on a permit to get through the creek now for a significant length of time. So much so that we are planning to construct either side of that creek as we await that permit. These are the options that we are currently being faced with. In addition to that, gaining landowners' consent on a number of other sites in the growth precinct out towards the Goona has been slow and a difficult process. Designs for these pipelines and these sewer pipe mains are complete. It is just waiting on the approvals.
Thank you. Mrs Squire?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just want to confirm the permits that Mr Warlow is referring to for the Nexus is the Crown Land Licence permits, not internal permits or permits from other authorities. It's more about a permit to access their land in order to run the infrastructure through their corridor.
Thank you. Councillor Conn, question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through to the relevant member of staff, please, regarding environmental planning assessment, which is on page 8. Please let me know if I'm reading this wrong. The percentage of development applications assessed by the environmental planner within our service charter compliance target being 85% and achievement being 59%. Well, my first question, is that correct? Is that my correct interpretation of that?
Mr Keys.
Mr Mayor, the number that's recorded there reflects the percentage of development applications that were referred to the environmental planner that have been processed within the internal referral times. Doesn't reflect an external service charter to our customers. It's an internal referral from our town planning team to the environmental planner and the percentage of how those have been performed.
Follow-up?
Follow-up question, given that we're below our target. Firstly, why did it get a green smiley face? And secondly, do we need an additional resource in environmental planning?
Mr Keys.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question. I certainly acknowledge that the green smiley face shouldn't be that happy. We're certainly not happy with the performance in there, and we do have a backlog of issues around the environmental concerns. And this is mainly because of changes in biodiversity reforms that are creating an increased demand and certainly a high demand on our environmental planner, which we're trying to monitor at the moment, and we'll do that through these figures. But thank you for the question.
Happy, Councillor Conn? Councillor Vanderven, question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Refer you back to the answer to Mr Warlow's, or the question that was posed of him. I'm just wondering whether you or the staff raised the issue of the lack of timeliness on the issuing of these permits by the relevant state authorities when the planning minister was here not so long ago.
Ms Squire.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, Councillor Vanderven, we didn't actually specifically raise this. We certainly talked about the infrastructure priorities and the strategic planning priorities, but we didn't raise it with the Minister of Planning because it is outside his portfolio. But, you know, point taken, it was potentially an opportunity to raise it. However, we have been raising it with other divisions within government. But noted. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you to Ms Squire. So are you actually liaising with the ministers of those departments responsible, or just the officers of those departments responsible?
Squire.
Through you, Mr Mayor, our focus at this point has been on the senior staff within those departments to ensure that we actually get a result, which we have been able to achieve recently, but there's no doubt it has presented its challenges.
Thank you. Okay. Squire, did you wish to backtrack on the item from Councillor Docks in relation to the Facebook?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I would like to. My apologies. Just looking at page 39 in the online communication social media, I've just realised that there appears to be a typo in the comparative figure for the reach across all Facebook profiles. The commentary is 724,000, but the achieved says 724. So clearly that is a typo. So thank you, Councillor Doxey, for picking that up. We'll rectify that. And if I could just quickly note, in terms of the online communication, in the commentary there, you'll also see that we have had a problem with spam bot during the month of June, which has obviously also had an impact. But we have put mechanisms in place to address those, so hopefully we won't have that problem again. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that. I was actually going to ask that question about the spam, but you're on top of it now. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, did we get a speaker for that motion at the start? I think we did, didn't we? Okay. Did you wish to close debate, Councillor Cameron?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 14.5, the Service and Efficiency Review Program, 6 monthly update. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council receive and note the 6-month Service and Efficiency Review Program progress report.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Second that motion, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, Mr Mayor. It's good to see that work is continuing and to be reminded on a regular basis of the immense savings that Council has achieved and its Council staff who have been driving this. So thank you very much and look forward to everyone agreeing with this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Thank you. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There are no delegates' reports for noting. I've been made aware of one notice of urgent business. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's been a weird week and month in politics federally, and I think that might have distracted for some people, I suspect, on some of the strange things that are happening at the state level. And one thing that impacts directly upon Albury, and has since the budget, is the question of what is the level of funding to Albury City Council in regards library operations and library funding. And through you, to the most appropriate member of staff, I'd like to seek clarification, because when the budget came out for the New South Wales state budget, it appeared, and Local Government New South Wales certainly appeared to think that there was a reduction in budget funding for libraries generally. The member for Albury, Mr Glacken, I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm showing my age there, apologies. A Freudian slip. The member for Albury, Mr Applin, put out a press release on the 28th of June, disputing that there had been a reduction in library funding generally, and particularly to Albury City, and claiming that the New South Wales Government had dedicated $5 million to the funding of infrastructure programs of public libraries through regional cultural grants, an increase of $1 million from the old public library program, And all councillors were sent a copy of this. Albury City Council subsidy payments and capital grants payments from New South Wales Government since 2010 total $1,267,699, and a list of other savings. And the comment, it is unfortunate that the $5 million claimed as slashing is actually a $5 million grant opportunity for councils, and it ends by saying how to turn a positive into a negative. Now that's well and good, and those claims were, you know, the members free to make those claims and did make those claims in his press release. But certainly Local Government New South Wales appears to dispute that, and on the 1st of August this year they announced in a press release which was sent to all councils once again, they said, today libraries across New South Wales will call for a doubling of the state government's funding to resolve a funding crisis that threatens the long-term viability of libraries. On Friday, all councillors were sent a copy of a press release from Austin Evans, MP, who I must confess I was happily ignorant of the gentleman's name and the fact that he does appear to be a National Party member for Murray, which from memory abuts the seat of Albury to the west. And in that, he says public library funding hits new record high, and that's on the 24th of August 2018, last Friday. So I think any person could be a little bit confused about where we're up to with library funding. And if the staff can succinctly shed some light on that, I'd appreciate it. It appears to me that it is a fact, despite Mr Aplin's press release of the 28th of July, that there was a reduction in public funding to libraries in New South Wales in this year's budget. And it would appear that the New South Wales Government on Friday had made an announcement redressing that and reinstituting and then adding more funding for libraries, if I'm reading these press releases correctly. But the whole thing is rather puzzling, and if any clarity can be given, I'd appreciate it, as this is a matter that directly impacts on the city of Albury, as we are one of the cities that operate a very large public library. Thank you.
Ms Crane.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I've also read the recent announcement, and $24 million for infrastructure grants has been allocated, which is to transform public libraries. Now, in relation to what that means for us, this appears to mean that in 2018-19 we'll receive a slightly higher funding than in 2017-18, and this is the first time the per capita subsidy has been increased in over 20 years. The government funding will increase from $1.85 per capita to $2.85 per capita.
So to clarify, Local Government New South Wales' assertion that there had been in the budget this year initially a reduction in funding appears to have been correct, but that has been more than corrected last Friday.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it appears so, yes.
So I would think that then there is no other conclusion to be drawn then, other than that the press release by the member for Albury on the 28th of June refuting or attempting to refute that there had been a reduction in public funding to Albury City libraries and libraries across New South Wales is incorrect.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not familiar with the actual press release at that time, so I hesitate to comment about its accuracy.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Just one minor item of mine. I just want a level of assurance, because it is an urgent matter, that I've been pulled up that many times by people in the community about the gates at the Botanical Gardens. And I got an email at my request the other day, and all councillors received this information, that it was to start this week. Are we on track with starting that project and restoring the gates to our historical Botanical Gardens? Ms Scrode.
In relation to the gates, I would like to hand over to my esteemed colleague David Armstrong, who would be able to provide an answer to that.
Esteemed. You're responsible for the gates.
Yeah, we've just about got them delivered. Through you, Mr Mayor. The gates have been to the powder coaters, and they're in the process of getting the contractor to do the installation, so they should be up very soon.
Thank you very much, Mr Armstrong. Oh, God. Okay. The completion of notice of urgent business. Confidential matters, there are none. Meeting finished at 8 o'clock. Thank you, Councillor.